That Trump just has this ability, extraordinary ability, to animate people against him and to make them do things that actually, in the end, rebound to their disadvantage and to his advantage.
Let's talk Donald Trump then. The US Supreme Court has rejected Colorado State's attempts to remove Donald Trump from the ballot for US president. He's been restored then for the primary, takes place tomorrow. The court rejected claims that he was accountable for the Capitol riots in 2021. More widely, it means that states now have no authority to remove him from the presidential ballot in 2024, in November this year, due to the insurrection, or due to an accusation that he was responsible for an insurrection. Donald Trump, I know, has spoken after the ruling today. I think I'm interested to hear from you, Jerry, first of all. What about those people in the states who say, but this isn't fair? The legal system is unfair. It means that a man who incited an insurrection, who said time and time again that it wasn't his fault, that he didn't encourage things, people who don't believe that point, people who feel that Donald Trump is divisive and is, wrong in what he's standing for. What do you say to those people who say this isn't fair? This isn't what US politics should be about. He's a crook.
Well, I'd say the United States has a constitution and the law is enforced according to the constitution. It's ironic you say, Donald Trump has been divisive and terrible for the country. It's actually managed, for one of the very few, certainly high-profile political cases, actually managed to unite the entire Supreme Court of the United States.
I haven't said that, by the way. I'm saying, what about people who say that?
I understand. Okay, I completely understand. It's not you, but that was there are six Republican-appointed justices on the Supreme Court and three Democrat-appointed justices on the Supreme Court, and on big political issues and constitutional issues, they quite often differ. On this, they were 9-0. The three liberal, progressive justices, one appointed by Joe Biden, two appointed by Barack Obama, all agreed with the others that this was a ridiculous effort, that states do not, under the Constitution, states do not have the right to determine whether or not someone can be on the national ballot for the election on the grounds of that particular amendment to the Constitution, which was written and written into law after the Civil War. Look, what I'd say, Kate, more broadly is this: that Donald Trump, just whatever one thinks of Donald Trump, and he faces many more legal challenges yet. And by the way, he'll probably unite the court against him in the next case that the Supreme Court's considering, which is whether or not he has presidential immunity from prosecution. That way, we'll go 9-0 against him. So there is, there is broad consensus here on what are the core principles of the law. What I'd say about it is that Trump just has this ability, extraordinary ability, to animate people against him and to make them do things that actually, in the end, rebound to their disadvantage and to his advantage. This case that Colorado, this attempt that Colorado had to try to kick him off the ballot, and a few other states have tried it too, was always an extraordinarily long shot, implausible, and, as we've now seen, unconstitutional thing to do. And they just hand Donald Trump these victories. It's going to be the same with so many of these legal cases. He faces this prosecution in Georgia right now, where the prosecutor is under tremendous pressure and investigation as to whether or not she behaved improperly. That case may well end up going nowhere. The case he faces here in New York City, is a ridiculous case. Most lawyers would agree, that has absolutely no basis whatsoever in federal law, but it's being brought here at the state level. And then there are other cases that have been the two other big cases that he faces are obviously relating to his handling of documents, and another case relating to the overthrow of the attempt to overturn the election. Look, I think what Donald Trump did after November the 3rd last year and before, and up to and including January the 6th, in the last election, was terrible, was indefensible. He should have been impeached. He was impeached. He should have been convicted and removed from office. But those are the constitutional remedies. Yeah. That there is a constitutional remedy there when somebody behaves like that. He was impeached by the House of Representatives. The Senate then hears a trial, and it declined to convict him. In my view, that was a mistake. But once that's done, that's it. Those are the remedies that the Constitution give you for that kind of a behavior. And if the representatives of the American people through their representatives in the Senate didn't do that, then I'm sorry, that's the law. So now we've got to do it. So instead of coming up with all of these rather sort of baroque interpretations of the law to try and get him off the ballot or get him disqualified, those are the law is there and is very, very clearly there. And by doing this, and this is what is tragic for those of people who don't want Donald Trump to be reelected, by going through these extreme measures to try to prevent him from being on the ballot, they only help him in the end. They elevate him to a kind of martyr status. They reinforce the message that he gives, that he's being victimized, that he's the victim of a witch hunt. They are making terrible mistakes in doing this. They are only helping Trump in doing this, whereas where they should leave this, it is a political matter. It should be left to the to the representatives and ultimately to the people to decide whether or not he's fit for office.
Peter.
Well, I completely agree with Gerard Baker that these court cases do nothing but help Donald Trump. I think there's been a kind of disease in the United States really since the days of Richard Nixon, where people try and obstruct and get rid of political figures they don't like through the legal system rather than through the democratic system. I think it's done a lot of damage and continues to do so. But on the other hand, I have a slightly uneasy feeling about an absolutely unanimous verdict from the United States Supreme Court, a very rare thing indeed. And I have to wonder why that should be the case. And I wonder whether it's simply that the court doesn't want to take any risks under these circumstances and can see clearly that Trump's support isn't going to be abated by this. And for heaven's sake, if they ruled the other way, imagine the consequences. Just none of this will work. And what puzzles me, and I wonder if Gerard Baker has any speculations on it, because I've heard some quite amusing ones, whether in fact the Democratic side of this election is planning somehow or other at a late stage in the matter around about the nomination time to find another candidate apart from Joe Biden who might conceivably stand successfully against Donald Trump. And Donald Trump won the first time because the Democratic Party picked probably the only person in America who couldn't beat Donald Trump in the shape of Hillary Clinton. I don't know quite how much effort they've put into putting all their strength and muscle behind poor old President Biden under the current circumstances, or whether really they're just waiting till later to come up with a surprise candidate who might beat him. But at the moment, they've got nothing to say.
Yeah,
there continues speculation about that.
We have
Peter and Kate.
30 seconds left, Jerry. Apologies, otherwise we'll be really late to the news. But dive on in.
There continues to be speculation about that. Look, but it's very hard to remove a president if he doesn't want to go. And I've said this before. I think in my column and on your program, Kate, that John McCain famously said the only known cure for presidential ambition is embalming fluid. And, with Joe Biden, we might unfortunately be close to testing that proposition. If he doesn't want to go, and there's no evidence that he wants to go, it's very, very hard to get rid of him. As dire as his situation, and indeed the situation of the country increasingly looks, it's very, very hard to dislodge a president from, either from office or indeed from being the nominee of his party when he's been elected as the nominee of his party.
Yeah, look, I mentioned this poll earlier, and I'll just round it off with that. It was a new poll by the New York Times and Siena College. For those voters who backed Joe Biden 4 years ago, 61% now say that he's just too old to be an effective president. And this runs through so much polling at the moment, that he's too old, that he's ineffective. It makes you wonder who is running the country at the moment. Is it really Joe Biden, or, is it all about now having a structure of staff around him, beneath him, who can support him as the president only for short periods of time in public, more than the work that goes on behind the scenes? Look, we will talk more about that at Super Tuesday tomorrow. We'll be at the Republicans Overseas event. We'll talk about Donald Trump. Now, what has he got planned for his presidency in office if he gets there?